Namaskar. I'm Mrs. Manjusha Kelkar, founder of a platform called Breakthrough Higher Education. I primarily deal or mentor students going for their medical journey. In this process, what I felt that it was very necessary to introduce students to different pathways, to different gateways, because students nowadays feel like they want to study in India as well. They want to pursue or they want to understand what is the track out there, like in doing something in USA or any of the countries out there, because the world is slowly becoming smaller and smaller. Our children are also going out, and everything is open now. So, to address all this, whatever we have in our mind, I usually interview people. So, in the series, Gateway to Medical Education in USA, you have listened to two interviews before that. If you want to have the link of that, there is my YouTube channel available with the name Breakthrough Higher Education. You can visit them. In the series, I want to track today's journey. She's a non-traditional applicant for residency. That's what I call it. And why non-traditional? Let us understand. So there may be many surprises. There may be many wow factors in this particular interview. So let us invite Sneha from US. So she's a US resident, and let us track our journey. So without any further delay, let me invite Sneha. Hello, Sneha.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi.
Glad to talk to you.
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, yeah.
Yeah. So where do you stay in US?
I'm in California right now. So I
Okay.
grew up here and I'm back right now.
Okay. Great. 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 So you are a born US citizen, as I understand.
Yes, that's correct.
So, how was your journey being an Indian and Asian living in US? So, how was the feeling? How was the cultural mix like? Or you must have gone through the goods and bads of both the cultures. So, how was your experience out there? Was there a conflict? Because we call you people as uh, permanent residents of US, but with Indian origin, something like that. So,
Right.
how was that experience of when you were growing up?
So definitely it's like a unique experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Because I got to experience both cultures and kind of define my own in that process. Because definitely,
Mhm.
growing up here and with my parents, both being from India, so that they brought a lot of that culture and those values with them. So I grew up with them. And I was
Mhm.
lucky enough to be able to go back and visit every couple of years to visit like my grandparents and cousins.
Mm.
So I got to get a good understanding of the Indian culture and how I can integrate that, even with being, day to day in my education and being here in the US, having a very different perspective, just see like thrown at me each day. But it's very different once you step out of the house compared to being at home where it's
True, true.
more of an Indian home feel.
Yeah. So you people are maybe lucky in some ways. In some ways, out there, you may be unique, as you said, that you experience, as I say, that best and worst of both the worlds, maybe. So, and then you can pick and choose. Maybe you have got a choice to behave either this way or that way at any given point of time or situation. Sneha, in India, when we talk about education, it's an emotional journey for every parent and every student, because here we are very much focused, and mothers, especially, are very much behind their child. What are you going to do? What are you going to become? Something like that. So, how pressurized you were when you are growing up till your 12th standard to perform either this way or that way?
No, and I definitely hear that a lot from my cousins and from even from what my parents went through when they were growing up. And for us also growing up here, my parents put a lot of emphasis on education. It was very important, and having my parents both being in professional careers, whether it was subconscious or not, there was also my desire, I think, from that to want to reach a similar level to some
Mm-hmm.
extent, whether that was, just at the college level or doing something beyond that. But my parents were also very clear to say, you can do anything, but you have to decide what that thing is, and nobody can tell you what that is. And I
Great.
think the biggest thing that I learned from that, which when going into college, was realizing that I needed to explore more. And until I did that exploring, I wouldn't really have an idea of what I really wanted to do until I went
Mm-hmm.
through the steps to say that, okay, this is something that I've tried, and either these are things that work about it, and these are things that I don't like about it, and making my decisions from there.
Great. So, but basically, you are an exploring soul.
Yeah.
Yes. So a curious and a exploring soul, maybe. So see, I want to tell the viewers the journey what she has taken, as I have understood her while talking to her, while discussing with her. I have seen a passion driven person. She is a passion driven person, but to get that passion, to realize that passion, everyone has to work hard. And let me tell you, there are no shortcuts in medical education. Whenever we are trying to go for a field like medicine, there are no shortcuts available. You have to strive, you have to work hard, you have to be competitive to achieve what you want. But if you have got that passion, then everything is possible. This is what I have understood when I was talking to Sneha. So, what she did was, first she did her BS in cell biology. So she kept her options open. Isn't it, Sneha, that you kept your options open whether you want to pursue your medicine or not, or you want to understand another track of research?
Yes, absolutely. And even in choosing my major, I chose the major that would give me the most options within science.
Yes, 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 true. So then after that, she did her job also. That means she worked for 1 year after doing her BS, and then let us understand what she did after that.
So after I finished my bachelor's degree and I worked for a year, but in the job that I had, I realized that I wanted to do something a little bit more in terms of helping the community at large compared to what I was doing just in my day-to-day job, which to me did not feel very fulfilling. So from there, I pursued a master's in public health, which,
Okay, okay, just hold on, Sneha. So you
yeah,
did your MPH. You did
yes.
your MPH for 2 years or 1.5 years. You completed your MPH, that is Masters in Public Health. Exactly, what was going on in your mind when you did your MPH, and why did you do your MPH?
So there were actually a couple things going on in my head at that time. One of the things was realizing that with the level of education that I had up to that point, my options were very limited and I didn't like the options that were available to me. I had
Mm-hmm.
a broader vision for what I wanted to do in terms of serving the community and working somehow within the science and health space. I didn't really understand at that point what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something in that space. And with a master's in public health, I knew I would be exposed to a lot of those fields because with that, it's your health policy, it's epidemiology, it's global health. There are lots of areas that you're sort of understand about the broader picture of healthcare and health, really,
Mm.
both on a national and international level. That would give me sort of that bird's eye view to start
Okay.
making a better decision about what I wanted to do.
Okay, great. So after you did your MPH, then you actually realized that you want to go for medicine, or you took up a job and then you realized after MPH?
Um, I was sort of hinting towards it, but I think I hadn't because it's such a commitment to do medicine, and it wouldn't be like a master's degree 2 years and then done. So
Mm.
I at that point I was thinking about it, but I still wasn't 100% sure. But I knew I had an interest in research at the time, so I decided to continue working in research while
Okay,
I decided that and started building towards medicine.
okay, okay, okay. So how was your experience working? Were you working in clinical research area somewhere?
Yeah, I was doing clinical research at an academic institution.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
So with clinical research, it was different from basic lab research, where you're working, with samples or with a microscope and doing much more solitary work, I would say, for in terms of research. With clinical research, what was really fascinating for me was being able to work with patients, because all of the
Oh.
studies we were doing, whether it was trying out a certain medication and seeing how that affected a patient, or trying a medical device and seeing if it was more efficacious than what was the current standard. It wasn't just working with the data and kind of filling things out and kind of running the statistics. It was also just the aspects of interacting with patients and being able to see how the work that I was doing with the clinical research was helping them, in terms of their care and improving their health as well.
Great, great, great. So you worked as a clinical researcher, and while doing this, while interacting with the patients, you again realized that yes, medicine is my calling.
Yes.
So you, before that, have you appeared for your MCATs after your BS?
No, not after my bachelor's. I did it after my master's degree. So within the first year or two when I was doing clinical research, I did it.
Okay. So you did your MCATs at that point of time. Yeah, you appeared for them. So let me understand for how much time the score is valid, MCAT score?
It was, I don't think it's changed, but I believe it's 5 years.
Okay. So you had the score. That means you again have kept one option open. So that if you are not comfortable either, or still you feel like going to medicine, you can anytime go to medicine because you have applied for your MCATs.
Right. That's true.
Okay. So then, Sneha, you started appearing or you started applying for your med schools. And then at one point of time, you realized that you were not getting maybe admission to a very good med school. Maybe
Right.
Ivies or something like that, you must have dreamt. And then you switched on to Australia. How did
Right.
that happen? And what it
So
took for you to apply? I would like to understand. Yeah.
So, similarly, as there are other programs, I think Caribbean has a program like Philippines and so on. But basically, after I had applied and I wasn't what I had hoped for in terms of the caliber of an institution to do medical school at, I wasn't pleased in the results that I had gotten from my admissions. So I decided, because this program that I went to, I knew it would be at a internationally recognized institution with very clear standards, and being able to go for 2 years in Australia and then coming back and doing my clerkships in the US, which for me at the time was important to go forward, because I knew that would have an impact on my residency applications. But the biggest thing in terms of learning about the program and the application process itself, it was very similar to how we normally apply for US medical schools. I had to fill out an application with personal statement, letters of recommendation. I had to do an interview as well with the school before they offered me admission. And at that point, move forward.
Okay. So you started your application, or you just applied for one school in Australia, or how did it go? You applied for multiple schools, or you applied only for one school?
I just applied for this one school in Australia. I had also considered the Caribbean schools as well, but this was, to me, just seemed like a very good option, and I was very happy with the way the structure of the curriculum was.
Okay. Because what I have understood talking to many students out there, that people are opting for that option as well. People are going to Philippines, people are going to Caribbeans, and then North American colleges, and then the same pattern follows there also. So you choose one of them, being Australia, as your option. Like 2 years of MD in Australia, and after that, a third and fourth year of rotations in US.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. How was your experience when you went there? Was there any cultural difference or a cultural shock? I won't say, but yes, any cultural differences you observed after going from US to Australia?
So definitely there were, oddly enough, just in adjusting to the lectures, because there's the accent, which is takes a little bit to get used to, and trying not to be enamored in the sound of the voice and actually listening to what they're saying, was something that I needed to do. And then also because they use British spellings there and I'm used to American spellings.
Yeah,
So
for example, color.
right.
COLOUR and COLOR. Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. Your spellings differences.
So it was
Yeah.
often a point of contention that we had to clarify, because there were other students from the US and even Canada, who were there, that we
Mhm.
had to make a point, even for exams, to clarify with the instructors, like, okay, if I spell it this way, I'm still going to get marks for this, right? Like, you're not going to count this against me. So that was a little bit different. And of course, the other thing too was, going to a new country and being on my own for that. So, as it is, medical school can be like, it's very academically taxing.
Mm,
And so I kind of had to create my own support system and realize that I had to make friends quickly with my classmates, because I didn't have that support system of, my parents being only a couple 100 miles away or anything like that. So that was
mhm.
one of the things to adjust to, just in addition to the academics, which is its own roller coaster of the fire
Yeah.
hydrant of information.
So, what about cooking, Sneha?
Cooking?
Yeah, you people
Yeah,
have to cook
so
on your own, or you were in a mess or something like that.
no, I had my own apartment, so I was cooking my meals for myself, each day, and that was actually the one nice thing about Australia. Was where I was. It was only like, I think, a 20-minute walk. There was a nice farmers market with very fresh fruits and vegetables.
Hmm.
So I feel like I ate more healthily in those 2 years where
Yeah,
I was there
yeah.
than I would have
And maybe
otherwise.
it was a stress buster for you.
Right. No,
Sometimes cooking is a
definitely.
stress buster because you're cooking something for yourself. Yeah. Okay. So you adjusted well. You spent 2 whole years in Australia,
Right.
and the experience was very good. Just let me tell in short about your journey. Like, how was it teaching methodology wise or exposure wise in your first and second year of MD?
Mhm. Yeah, so in terms of our curriculum, so we had didactics, which was just straight lectures with the PowerPoint, for most of the clinical sciences. So those were divided up based on organ systems. So we went through like cardiology, then separate for neurology and gastroenterology, and we just went through all the systems that way. And then in addition, we had different smaller reviews, with pathology and anatomy. So anatomy in particular, we had prosected specimens that we
Mm-hmm.
had to go, and it wasn't required that we go to those labs, but unless we went, that would be the only way that we got exposure to that information, to be able to see it up front and ask questions, because they wouldn't teach it to us. They would maybe give us a packet of information, but it was on us to read through that information, come into the lab and say, okay, this is the thing that I don't understand, and ask the TAs and the teachers who were there in the lab, because they wouldn't go out of their way to tell you things unless you asked. So
True.
that was,
So, Sneha, one input I would like to give students coming from India, that everywhere in the world, the system of teaching is slowly moving to self-study method. It's a flipped classroom type of thing which is coming up. It's not every time that chalk and board method would be there. They'll simply give you the content, and then it's upon you that how much curious you are, or how much internally you feel that you want to know. Unless and until you want to know, nobody is going to bombard you with the information out there. That's what the system we are moving to. Is it so? What is your observation?
I think that's definitely true, because, given the breadth of information even that there is, I don't think there would be enough like lecture time to really get all of it out there anyway. But like one of the things that we also had was having these case-based learnings, which was completely on the person who was in charge of that case to find all the information. They didn't even tell you where to go looking for the information, but you would basically have a patient case of coming in with some, history and working through from A to Z, and we would have to basically be an expert about that topic because we're not just learning for ourselves in that situation, we were teaching our other classmates about the topic.
True. So it's peer learning.
Exactly.
And then after that, your professor is out there to solve your doubts. If you
Correct.
have either gone wrong or conceptually you have any problem. So professors are there. But you have to do your complete homework. You have to research everything about that case and present it in front of your peers. And after that, with input of all of them, you'll learn.
Mhm. No,
That's
definitely. And I
that's the
think, yeah.
that's the motive. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think it's one of those things I think that concept is actually setting you up for when you eventually become a physician yourself, because nobody is going to tell you where to look for the answers. You have to already
Mhm.
have an idea of, okay, I have this piece of information, I have that piece of information. Where do I go looking to find my answers?
Mhm.
Then I need to figure this out.
Great. Okay, so this was your first year, and as well second year. Was there any difference in first and second year? And when did you start your preparations for your step one? Because ultimately, after you clear your step one, then only you can go for your rotations in US.
Yes, that's correct. So that was a requirement of the program that I was in, that you have to finish, you have to have cleared step one before you continue with your third year. And I think most US schools are that way too. They have a requirement of when you have to take your step one. But the difference in terms of my curriculum in my second year, what was a little bit different was, rather than just learning about, how to take histories and how to do exams, we were just at that point practicing on each other as students. We were actually at that point allowed to go into the hospital with a preceptor or a consultant and practice our exams, practice our history taking on patients. So we got a more real world feel about how it is to talk to a patient. What are the sounds that you're looking for and where when you're looking on different patients? Because, if you're only practicing on one person, when you get a completely different body type, you won't know what you're doing. So I think that was the other good thing in terms of direct patient contact that we started getting in our second year.
Great. So yeah, you have got actual patient exposure in your second year, and after that or during this span, you appeared for your step one.
Right. So my step one preparation started at the beginning of my second year, and it basically continued and through the end. And I had a 1 or 2 month gap from the end
Okay.
of my actual year two exams and when I have to start my third year. So that time I took as my dedicated to study for step one and give the exam.
Get the exams. So all the resource materials you must have used online, you must have used books, and after that you must have cleared your step one. And now is the time to return back to home. So
Right.
was your rotation near your hometown, or was it far away from your home?
So it actually wasn't very nearby. So my rotations were all in Louisiana, which is more than halfway across the country from California. I think, I don't know how many thousand miles, maybe around 5,000 miles or something like that. So definitely not nearby, and not very easy to just, drive home on a weekend to either get laundry or some nice food.
Yes, but you were in the same country.
Yes, I was in the same country. So.
And why this? Means why exactly people out there do this type of bifurcated course? What's the basic reason? Why didn't you do your third and fourth year rotations in Australia? What was the basic reason?
So the very basic reason was because my future career path is to be a physician in the US. I would,
Hmm.
to give myself a better chance, and especially for those who review residency applications, they like to see that you've done your clerkships, that you've done those rotations in your third and fourth year in the US, so that you understand the US system, that you've worked with US faculty, because that's also the point where you're getting a lot of your letters of recommendation and lots of evaluation in your third and fourth year that plays a big role in your residency application. So to do that in the US was, for me, very crucial.
Okay. So, Sneha, if at all you would have done your third and fourth year MD in Australia, were you allowed to your PG or residency in Australia also?
Yeah,
If at all
that
someone
wasn't
wants to settle.
right. So I actually did have some classmates that, even though they were US citizens, they ended up wanting to settle in Australia. So they either, whether that was doing all of their rotations here and then applying in Australia, or managing to do a half and half, to do some
Okay.
of their rotations in Australia as well. But the program allowed us the opportunity that at the end of 4 years, since it's an Australia degree granting institution, that we could apply for our intern year in Australia.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Okay, great. So that means when you return back, you are still an IMG, International Medical Graduate.
Correct.
In spite of being a US citizen, you are an IMG.
Yes.
Okay. So when you apply for your residency as an international medical graduate, it is important, that's what you said, to do 2 years of rotation in US, because that gives you the working pattern, that gets you accustomed to the US hospitals, the working, the documentation procedures, the history taking, the terminologies, maybe sometimes they are different. So you get accustomed to all these things, and that looks good on your CV as well when you are applying for your residency positions.
Yes.
Is what I have understood. Now,
Right. It's
what?
not required, but it's definitely, it gives you a leg up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not necessary 100%, but yes, it gives you an edge above others.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So, what exactly is rotation or clerkship? What do you mean by that? Because, some of the students listening out there in India, we call it internship. Like after 4.5 years, our students do 1 year of internship and then they get their final medical degree. In US or in other countries, the pattern is first you do your BS, then you appear for your MCATs, then you enter into your MD. And in MD also, out of 4 years, 2 years are almost not, I'll not say theoretical, but it's lab plus lectures. And then for next 2 years, it is called as either rotations or clerkships. So, how does it happen? What exactly is a clerkship?
So
And
clerkship.
one more thing I like to understand, Sneha, is that what is the difference between hands-on? Means because there is a different terminologies prevalent. Someone calls it clerkship, someone calls it observership, someone calls it you are allowed to do hands-on or you are not allowed to do hands-on. So just let me understand what exactly rotations are. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So clerkships or rotations are basically, so for US schools and with my school also, for your third and fourth year, you're not in a classroom. You might have some small teaching sessions once or twice a week, but it's not often, and it's not usually very scheduled. But what you're doing for each week or each block, possibly, we had our rotations in, like, basically divided into blocks. But what it is you're going through each of the specialties, so you understand how those specialties work. So regardless of what field that you go into as a physician, you know enough about each of those fields that if you see a report, you can understand what they're talking about. Or if you need to refer to them or understand, what's going on with your patient, that they need to have those other services, that you understand what's going on with those services as well. So it's kind of that whole picture of your, hospital medicine, internal medicine, your surgery, pediatrics, obstetrics, gynecology, psychiatry. Those are 5 are the ones that we call our core rotations. And those are the
Okay.
actual
So
other ones.
yes, Sneha. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you,
sure,
but this
sure.
is what is core rotation. Correct.
Right.
So you rotate to almost all the departments. That's what, in a layman's language, I can say that you almost rotate to all the departments which are primary departments, I would say, primary branches or primary faculties of
Yeah.
medicine. So you
Mhm.
rotate to all these for maybe 6 weeks or 9 weeks, depending upon the necessity. And
Mhm.
this is called as core rotation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So those
So,
core
hmm,
rotations are actually like for the step 2 USMLE, like you need to have an understanding of those core rotations because those are the all the subjects that come up in step 2 also.
okay, okay, great. So before having your step two, if you have done all these rotations, then it is easier, or your understanding level is more, because in step two, as I understand, these are application based questions. So
Correct.
you will not be able to answer the application based question until and unless you have actually seen the patients, you have actually worked in those particular environment. And
Mhm.
but I think some weightage to communication skills also is there too, because there are some questions out there on those topics also. Okay, so this is your core rotation. So what is hands on then?
So the hands-on part, which distinguishes, your clerkships and rotations from, say, an observership, is that you're not meant to just be, it sometimes happens that way, but it's not the intent that you are there and you're not supposed to just be a fly on the wall. You're supposed to get involved.
Hmm.
So, for your, say, your medicine rotation, which is, hospital medicine, or actually, yeah, all of them,
Hmm.
you go in and you come in at the same time as the residents are coming in,
Hmm.
and you're assigned patients, which means that you may not have as many patients as the residents have, but
Hmm.
you're supposed to maybe have one or two patients that you're supposed to follow. So that means
Hmm.
you go and you do their history and physical. You
Hmm.
understand what's going on in their entire medical history, that,
Hmm.
okay, they're having, this problem today, so maybe they need a new medication, but what is their other history that
Hmm.
you can say, okay, this is what needs to happen with their management. So that way, when you take onus of the patient in that regard, you're learning much more about that patient's disease process, than you would, say, just as an observership, where you're just standing maybe next to the resident while the resident's doing everything, and
Okay.
you're not physically, or you're not directly involved in the patient care, as
Okay.
much as that. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's sort
Okay.
of the distinction between the two.
Distinct between. Okay. So now, yes. So first year is over. What happens after that? And parallelly, are you preparing for your step two?
So, ideally, you would be continuing to, like, as you go through each core rotations, like the smart thing to do would probably be, going along with like the step 2 material to kind of help keep pace.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what I ended up doing was I went through the entirety of the year and then I started revising and working on step 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's also, you have to mentally prepare yourself, for these exams, because, like step 1 is a 7-8 hour exam, which in and of itself is its endurance situation.
True.
But then you
Mm-hmm.
jump onto step 2 and they add an hour. And so what you think is a full day is now becomes a little bit more. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I felt like I needed a break before I started training for that again. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't start my preparation until the end of my third year for step 2.
Mm-hmm. First step two. So after your third year, you have entered your core now, core
Right.
rotations.
Yes.
Okay. So what are core rotations? The core rotations are the areas or the faculties in which you in future wish to do your residency. You select, or it is given to you.
Oh, for you mean the elective rotation? Right. So elective rotation, so for we get to choose. So, it's could be something that if that's the field that you want to go into, you do an extra elective rotation, or what they sometimes call a sub internship, because it's sort of
Mm.
like, I guess in a sense, like a trial job interview that you're doing all the actions that a first-year resident would do. And you're kind of learning from that aspect. So you're getting a good feel of, okay, is this really the field that I want to do? And getting like a letter of recommendation to help with your application at that point. What other people do is, say if they're not sure, if they're kind of between a few options, they try out that other field that they're sort of thinking about to kind of help them make that decision. Because, you know, in the US, you're not given the opportunity as a first-year resident to do general medicine and then subspecialize from there. You have to make the decision before you finish your MD. So you have to have made that decision midway through, or not even midway through, like a quarter of the way through, like your fourth year. Or no. Yeah, you have to make it basically by the end of your third year, beginning of fourth year. You have to know what you're applying. So it doesn't give you a lot of time to explore after the fact. So using that elective rotation to do that is sometimes beneficial for people.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the process you went through. And let me understand the chronology of year in which you appeared for your step one. In which year you appeared for your step one?
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yes.
Then when did you appear for your step two?
Step two was just this past year, so 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
And immediately afterwards, you collected all your documents. For example,
Right.
all your LORs, your SOPs, and everything. So you have to submit what? You have to submit your med school reports and everything. MD first year, second year, the transcripts. How it goes? What? A rough idea. What are the things that you have to submit during your application?
So the main things that, so like your transcript is not, I think you, at least for us, we had to authorize the school to release that. But your USMLE scores, you have to authorize that to be released to schools. You have to have your letters of recommendation ready. So that's something to usually get ready a couple of months beforehand. So I like our applications, just because of COVID, like September, October timeframe is usually when things go in. But you should be asking like your letter writers in June to give them enough time to write and that to send things in. And then on top of that, you have to write a personal statement, sort of saying, this is why I want to go into this field that I'm applying to. And then you also have to basically, they call it the ERAS. Actually, the ERAS is the main application portal. You have to write up all your activities. So every volunteer opportunity that you did during medical school, every research project that you did, any committees that you were on, any leadership positions, any awards that you won. Those are all things that you want to put into your application, like your basic life support, advanced ACLS certification, things like that. That all goes into the application in addition to.
It's very important that your application should be a holistic application. Is that so?
Yes, that's
so
definitely true.
That means the evaluation does not only happen based on your either your MD scores or your USMLE scores. It happens holistically. You are judged holistically.
Yes, because programs are not just looking at, okay, do you have like the good scores that we want to see that somebody is competent and, you know, in terms of understanding, you know, how the pathology and things like that. They want to be able to see, okay, are you interested in this topic? So some people, like if they want to do oncology, like they do several years of oncology research during their third and fourth year, if they're able to, or they, you know, work with, you know, hematology interest groups or work with cancer patients to kind of, you know, help them in the hospital and provide them with care and support. So those are all things they're kind of looking for in the application to say, okay, this person's really serious about wanting to do this.
So the field in which you want to do your residency, you should be really passionate about, and you should be able to showcase it as well. because you have to write it in documents. You just cannot say that I'm interested. You must be able to show that you are really interested. That means you should be doing some activities in support of your statement per se.
Right.
And how does extracurricular come in here, Sneha?
So those extracurriculars, so like the volunteering opportunities, those also come into play in that case. So like I know people who've worked with, what is it, Habitat for Humanity, or doing, community outreach in some form or another. Those are all things that kind of showcase, not just the interest, but also some cases like leadership skills, or in some cases it deepens their understanding about healthcare and patients in a way that gives a different side to just to the person that they don't always see with just sort of your grades or your scores.
Great. So right now, Sneha is on a burner right now because she is just awaiting her match day. Right, Sneha? So you have finished with your applications, and how many interviews did you attend? 11, I have heard.
Yeah. So I had 11 interviews that I went through.
Okay.
It was kind of nice this year. I didn't have to fly anywhere because I wasn't allowed to.
This year, due to virtual interviews, you didn't have to travel. But otherwise, you have to travel to 11 places. If you have got interview calls from 11 different places, then you have to travel to 11 places.
Yes. Because normally the interview season, so the interviews in a typical year, 2020 notwithstanding.
True.
But usually you're supposed to travel to the hospital or wherever the residency program is. And like the night before, they'll probably have like a pre-interview dinner where when you get to know the residents and they get to know you. Then you have a full day of interviews and doing an orientation where you actually get to see the hospital and the surroundings to get a better picture of what your day-to-day would be like. And then you either that evening or the next day get to fly home for wherever you came from. So it's
okay. So it's a 24-hour process if physical interviews are happening. Which starts the day before with the dinner with residents.
Right.
Yeah. So this was avoided only for this year, but next year this process will be in place. So 11 interviews, Sneha. For how much time did they interview, and what was your experience of appearing for those interviews? And if you could give some insights on which type of questions do they ask you, and what are they exactly trying to see in a future resident?
So, definitely the interviews itself, it kind of depended on the program. Some of them were more concise, maybe like 4 or 5 hours. I did have one or two that actually ended up being like almost a full day, but that was just because due to the number of residents they're trying to rotate through, because they have a limited number of people who are doing the interviews, they're trying to rotate everybody through. So it's not necessarily like you're on all the time. There are lots of breaks in between, but it can get quite taxing just doing like a full day of online interviews. But for most part, it's the interviews are very similar to, I guess, a job interview, but they are not only just asking like, okay, what are your strengths? What, tell me about yourself, why this program or why this residency, why this specialty, but they're asked a lot more of behavioral questions because they want to know, in addition to, understanding your drive and your passion, they're trying to figure out, okay, it's not just, the interviewer or the attending that you're going to be dealing with, it's all the other residents and everybody has to get along. So they want to make sure that you're able to deal well with teamwork, that you deal well with conflict resolution. What would you do if you had somebody who is like a difficult personality? How do you manage that, whether that's a coworker or a superior or a patient, and just getting a better understanding of, okay, this is how this person is in a professional setting, how they are with their coworkers, and also how do they respond to stress? Because inevitably, especially with medicine, there's going to be a lot of stressful situations. So we want to be sure that it's someone who has a personality for resilience and sort of that growth mindset to keep getting better and being adaptable to those situations.
Okay. So that means, Sneha, some of your interviews lasted for 3 to 4 hours. Some of your interviews lasted the whole day.
Right.
Okay. So it should be taxing basically mentally to because maybe they are not asking you questions, but you are on.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to be fully wide and awake for say 12 hours because so maybe that way they are testing your resilience and how you react under stress or pressure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way before, but I wonder if they did schedule it that way on purpose.
Because they are keeping on hanging you. They are not just finishing it off. They are just simply lingering on because sometimes we feel like just ask it and finish it off. What's there to keep me there for 12 full hours on the net and completely online? Maybe that may be their intention to do that. That's what I understand. Okay, Sneha. So you are just in the waiting. So maybe we will track your journey after you get your and we are all hopeful and I'm sure that you are going to 100% get your residency. What is the faculty that you are looking for?
So I'm looking, you mean like the type of institution? Or specialties.
No,
So I'm planning to do internal medicine.
You're
So
planning to
that's
do it.
my goal. Yeah.
Okay. And your dream institute?
Oh dear. I think my dream institute at this point is just, okay, let me get the right type of, I think any institution where I will grow as a resident and be like a well-rounded physician. I think even if it's in a city that I'm not particularly thrilled about, as long as I have that interaction with, the people around me, that I think, in 3 years I'll be happy and then I can make my decisions of where to go.
True. So you can take a license to the state where you want to go. Actually, go. You can apply for that. Okay, as Sneha as a person, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Okay. So 10 years from now, I would say probably I would be a practicing physician, hopefully back home in California. Because I think, in the long term, that is where I would like to end up. My family is here, so that's kind of the hope. But in terms of my career, I would want to be doing some mixture of, direct patient contact and, clinical, just day to day with patients, doing research that helps my patients, so working in clinical research and coming up with research questions in that regard, and then also doing a lot of community outreach. Because I think, especially having that public health background for me has made a big impact in how I see healthcare and how I want to, because I think unless that infrastructure is there, it's kind of like putting the Band-Aid on like much further downstream, where if you do things more upstream, I think it can do a lot of benefit for the society.
As I can see it, maybe we can do more of a preventive medicine instead of a curative medicine. Because after the disease has happened, it goes for a cure. But can we prevent it? So maybe that's the biggest service we can do to the society. You people can do to the society if you go for preventives. Okay, great, Sneha. So if I may, who are your role models? One or two, or a single role model? Do you have any role models per se?
So, definitely, I think, one of the biggest role models that I've had in my life is just sort of, is sort of cliche maybe it is to say is like my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the way that they've had their work ethic and continuing, even in the face maybe of like, setbacks, because, definitely, doing all their education in India and reaching a certain level, then in this essence, having to start from scratch again when they came here.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have that resilience to still be motivated and keep going and saying, yeah, I'll get where I need to go. It's fine. And kind of not seeing your education as sort of the final milestone of wherever you're
Yeah.
achieving in your life. Because there's so many like chapters that I think that we go through and taking the lessons of what you've learned up to that point and saying, okay, I've done what I can with this chapter. Let me start something new, and being open to that without feeling like it's a failure or that, oh, I didn't reach, what I was hoping for, but not really like realizing that those things shape what you get to do next and
True.
help give you
True.
those tools to do so.
Great. And Sneha, any other aspect of Sneha which we don't know? Or apart from going to medicine, what else Sneha does?
So I mean, I like to hike. So that's something that I'm definitely doing. But the other thing I do is I like to write quite a
Oh.
bit. So that's actually one of the things before I decided, doing the public health route. I had a moment where I was considering journalism.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I still try to write to kind of continue with that. But my sort of side project until I figure out where I'm going for my residency is I'm hoping to write a book and finish a book by the time I start.
Great. So shortly we will be having a bestseller, New York bestseller by Sneha.
One can only hope. Let's see.
Yeah, true. Great having you on the show, Sneha. And if you could contribute by writing some blogs about your journey or the procedural requirements, we would be very happy to read them also. Because your journey is, as we said, it's a non-traditional path which you have taken, and still you are trying to go or move towards your passion. And when a person realizes his or her passion, uh, uh, then it's a wow moment for us that yes, and then we can do anything to get that done. That's what I have understood from your journey. And it's never late to do anything, to pursue anything. It's never late. That's also I have understood from your journey. So all the best for you in future. And if someone wants to contact Sneha, I'm flashing my mobile number. You can just call me up and I'll connect you to Sneha if you want to have more insights with her. So thanks a lot, Sneha, for coming on this platform, whereby we are trying to give value in terms of what is like to study medicine. It's not only the marks, it's not only the money, uh, it's not only the patients, but it's passion. It's passion which takes you there. Because someone which I have heard always says that skills take you there, but passion keeps you there. So all the best to you, Neha, for this passion which you have shown. And yes, from all our viewers, all the best to you for your journey. I'll again interview you when you finish your residency. Then I'll again ask you the same question: where do you see your 10 years down the line? Maybe I'll get the same or a very different answer or a very different perspective out of you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So we do sign off.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Good morning in India and good night in US. Thank you. Yeah, bye.